Ladies, I just connected through my laptop.
Okay, great. Okay, there's some people coming in. We'll give them maybe like 2 minutes and then we'll go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexis Fox. I am the program manager for Startup FIU Local, and I'm really excited to be bringing this webinar to you all with the Miami-Dade Business Navigator on building government connections and how to market for municipal contracts. So first, a little bit about our great partner, the Navigator Program. The Miami-Dade County Business Navigator Program is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Association. So a little bit about our pilot program, the CNPP. It's established by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The SBA CNPP uses a community navigator approach to help small businesses with economic recovery. And the program is comprised of a lead hub at the center of a network of spoke organizations that deploy community advocates to work with small businesses on recovery and resilience. 100 million to 51 grantees is the goal here. Funding is broken into 3 tiers at national, state, regional, and local levels. And the goal is to improve the long-term economic recovery and resilience among the small businesses. A focus is placed on businesses owned by veteran, women, as well as socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. The program is comprised of the lead hub, as I said before, and the spokes that deploy into the community to advocate. And these are the Navigator programs: Ascendas, MDCC, Branches, Prospera, America's SBDC Florida at FIU, EDC, and Startup FIU Procurement. This coalition of partners secured $2.5 million via CNPP to create the MDBN program for the Miami-Dade County businesses. Our focus is to create a strong local community navigator network to assist socially and economically disadvantaged businesses with consulting, mentoring, and training. The navigator partners are specifically targeting minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and the LGBTQIA+ owned business community. And here's how you can contact the Miami Business Navigators, either by phone, on their website, by email, or on social media, and you can watch this video later on YouTube. So let's get started. Today, as I said, we're going to be talking about building government connections and how to market for municipal contracts. So as I am the programming manager now for Startup FIU Local, in my past life, I did a lot of work within Broward County cities in the procurement process through their marketing departments and other avenues where services and goods were needed. So I have a few takeaways here about the government process that I would love to share with you all. I want us all to have a general understanding of government procurement. It can be a little bit cumbersome. The language is very official. And so I want us all to get a really good feel of what you would be looking at if you were to receive a proposal from a government entity. I want to talk about bidding and proposals. I want to talk about the umbrella of preparing a bid or proposal for a government entity. While it is state regulated, everyone uses different systems. Everyone uses different procurement processes from city to city. So this is just a blanket so that you feel confident going in with at least a base understanding of how the government procurement process works. And then we'll go over the marketing basics for municipal contracts. How do you position your brand and your business to be seen, to be thought about during these procurement processes? So a part of understanding the government procurement is just getting a general feel for it. We'll talk about the legislation that's relevant to you as a small business owner. We'll talk about the government buying methods, and we'll talk about the major categories of government contracting. So first, the general government procurement flows very similar to the private bid sector. So the only difference is that because it's government, it is public record, unless stipulated otherwise, and we'll talk about a few exemptions to that. So the entity first generates what's called a public procurement notice, or PPN, or a solicitation. The bid cycle is then opened. You as the business submit your bid and any other associated documentation needed. The bid cycle closes, and then the elected vendors are contacted. And once they're contacted, then the contracting methods are discussed and deployed. So what legislation fuels this and puts you as a small business in place to receive these kind of opportunities? It's called the Small Business Goaling Program. It is backed by the current Biden administration. And the overall goal is to have at least 23% of the government-wide contracts go to small businesses. So there are efforts happening at the legislative level to support you. You've now seen kind of a brief overview of how the general government procurement cycle works, but are you prepared to go into a bid? So I found this quote, and it's from a very recent article from XLHR about government buying methods. And it says that while business owners know that federal procurement processes are highly regulated, the average business owner is uninformed about the buying methods that the government uses. And with that being said, I want us to take a closer look at these key government buying methods. So we're going to discuss 5 today that are prevalent in South Florida, and as well as at the local level between Miami-Dade and Broward County. But before we do, I want you to take a second and do a little quiz, either to yourself or put your answer in the chat. So I've listed here some buying methods at the government level. Consolidated purchasing, simplified applications, sealed bids are all 3. And I want you to tell me which one of these is an actual government buying method. So either to yourself or in the chat, you can put your answer. Have you heard of any of these before? Have you ever tried to procure in this way before? I'm interested to know. Take some time and think about your answers here as we go on. And think about that quote, the fact that it's not really well-known knowledge about this in the small business community specifically. So if you answered all 3, you were correct. The 5 key government buying methods are micro-purchasing, simplified acquisition procedures, sealed bidding, contracting by negotiation, and consolidated purchasing vehicles. These methods are deployed based on the service or product needed to be rendered, and they're also sometimes time sensitive as well. And we will discuss each of them in a little bit more detail so you can get an idea of where your business currently falls and maybe where your business would like to go in terms of being eligible for these methods. So we'll start with micro purchases. Micro purchase is the most widely used amongst local municipalities. It is the easiest to procure because it does not require any kind of competitive bid or quote, but it does have a purchasing limit of around $3,000. And that also varies from industry to industry. I see a raised hand here. Is there a question? Hi, I see you raised your hand here. Let me ask you to unmute. Okay, no questions. Sorry, Laura, I thought I saw they raised their hand. If you do have any questions at any time, please feel free to put them in the chat. We do have a Q&A section at the end of this presentation. But again, to the micro purchases, they are limited to $3,000 and under. They don't require any bids or proposals because they're done through a corporate P card, and they're the easiest type of purchasing method for contractors to deploy. Now, the disadvantage of this is that it is limited applications. So it varies from industry to industry how much you can actually spend. For contractors in Miami-Dade and Broward County, it's usually around $2,500 that you can spend on a P card with a contractor. For maintenance and administrative supplies, it ranges between $1,000 and $1,500 usually. As we're getting more versed in the digital space and understanding that things need to be purchased digitally, there's a little bit more wiggle room with that, but it is difficult to procure those longer vendor contracts with this. However, the upside to this is that about 70% of all government procurement transactions are micro purchases under $3,000 and are facilitated with the company P card, and that is from the SBA. So what that means is you can start to think about ways that maybe your service, if you do something on a larger scale, can be broken down to where it's applicable for that P card usage. And you can make those connections in multiple cities. There's no limit on those opportunities because they're not contracted and they're not proposal or bid based. So if you do something on a larger scale, that maybe you can find a way to make your service micro or bite-sized enough where you can come in for those urgent needs, which is what the P card is traditionally used for, then you have now created a new opportunity to connect with municipalities in a way that could lead to larger contracts in the future, or just be a steady stream of income for your business. So now we'll talk about the simplified acquisition procedures, which are quotes. The pros of quotes is that they're reserved specifically for small businesses when quoting between $3,000 and up to $150K in bids. And they're posted publicly via the Federal Business Opportunities. So we will talk a little bit more in the presentation about where you can find these bid opportunities. Most cities are pretty good about the PPN posting or the solicitation and making it public. Also, cities have a library for their registered vendors, so they get, in a sense, first dibs on those opportunities. We'll talk about vendor registration as well. But these are publicly announced opportunities. And as long as you meet the requirements and are able to satisfy all of the components within the time of the bid window, then you would be eligible. The con is, again, the open bid is a vast net to cast, so there's more competition. Also, you have to understand all aspects of the bidding process. You have to make sure that your proposal is following the very strict and sometimes very rigid procurement processes that are put in place by government in terms of what other additional information they may need, if they need certifications, if they want your proposal based out in hours versus a quarterly quote. Those are all things that you have to be very diligent about when you're giving for these larger quotes. I've seen procurement bid proposals have to be almost maybe 24 pages in documents. It can be very tedious to get this process done, which again is why it's so important to understand the language, because then you've conquered the first step. Lastly, it's government-based. Procurement is very number-based, so sometimes it comes down to price over quality. When you look at quotes, it's always the lowest bidder, unless there's other ramifications that may come into play, but even still, the margin is very slim. So if you do have a higher quality product, or your product price points higher than your competition, then it becomes difficult sometimes to be able to procure in the government space, because it is very much about going with the lowest bid. Next is sealed bidding, and this is a limited pool, so you don't have as much of the rat race that you would with the open quotes, but it's also not solely based on the lowest bid. So this is one of those areas where if you have a niche small business, or you offer a service that you know has a small competitive margin to it, this is where you shine, because it's not solely based on the lowest bid. There are other factors that come into play. So the example that I always use for this is when we procure for marketing services. When we're looking into an agency to take on PR, branding, and all that encompasses marketing and promotion, we cannot necessarily go with the cheapest person because it's such a quantitative and it's such a qualitative field, right? So yes, this person may be charging less on the hour, but you have the network. And that is where you get a little bit more wiggle room when you have these sealed bids. These are not publicly, these are usually written up in an RFP or an RFQ, request for quote or request for proposal, and sent out to the specific vendors that they are targeting. And we will talk about positioning yourself for those vendors towards the end of this presentation. The cons is that it can also still be a little bit competitive. Everyone is niche. And if your business is not known, or maybe no one referred, or they didn't have the proper contact information, then it's a missed opportunity for you. Also, even though it's a limited pool, sometimes what ends up happening is they don't want to have to go through that process again. So we procure for longer periods of time, which limits the opportunities. Now we'll talk about contracting by negotiation, which is the RFP that we were discussing a little bit earlier. The pros are that these are longer contracts. They're most likely to be renewed. They go 150K and over, and they are negotiable because of the longevity of the contract and the amount of money that's being put out for those contracts. So you can negotiate your rates. Most of the time with an RFP, they'll usually give you a time payment or a frame, but you are able to negotiate on your rates and do added value trades in this type of contracting. This is more for larger contracts, construction, things that would need to be done on a maintenance basis, administrative needs, things like that. And then the cons of this is that, again, it's a very limited pool. So what we need to do is make sure that we're visible in those spaces. It's difficult sometimes to procure those long-term contracts. It takes a very long time. From the time you submit your bid to the time you actually begin the work, the procurement process is dependent on each municipality and each entity on its own. It could be 3 to 6 weeks. It could be 3 to 6 months. It simply depends on the processes that they have in place. So be prepared for that. And it's usually for more highly specialized or technical products or service. Again, we're talking larger contracts, infrastructure, electrician, building maintenance. So if you're starting out in those businesses, or you've just started your smaller construction firm or anything like that, don't be discouraged, but just understand that this is a very specialized thing. But there are ways that you can work your way up to procuring these kinds of contracts. And last is the consolidated purchasing vehicles. These cover the general needs. This is everyday office things, office furniture, office supplies, again, janitorial service for your building or for the company's building, catering services if there's large lunches or networking and gathering, printing services if they do a lot of publication work. And these are also, again, long-term vendor agreements. So once you're in, you're in. They also do, most entities do a library for these kind of services. Things happen, people aren't able to come in every time, and so they will source from the library. And because of the way this is structured, there does offer less competition. The cons to this is that this can be covered commercially. This can be covered by any wholesaler that does office supplies. And most of them have corporate accounts set up available to them and a wider range of items and products in terms of inventory, which then creates limited opportunities. So think about this. Office Depot and Staples are great examples of companies that use the consolidated purchasing vehicle, right? Every office has an Office Depot account. Every office has done some kind of work with a FedEx or a Staples in order to get their supplies in. But think about the areas where you would stand out in terms of an Office Depot or a Staple. Think about the areas where you can supplement maybe quicker because you're nearby. Office Depot and Staples may not be readily available in your region. Maybe you offer a better quality product. Maybe there's some personalization to the stationery that you can throw in. Just think about the ways that you can make your business stand out in that procurement process, because there is value in that, and there is still opportunity. Now that we've discussed the buying methods, we're going to go ahead and talk about the categories for these contracts. So the buying methods have now been explained. You're in your contracting phase, and these are the methods that are most widely used: fixed price, time and materials, cost reimbursement, incentive contracts, and indefinite delivery and quantity. So these are the different categories that your contract will fall in, and you need to know exactly where your business fits in these contract models.
Alexis, we
Yes.
have a question,
Sure.
which I think that ties in with the slides that you're into.
Okay.
It's from Polly DeGuy, and her question is, are there any municipal contracts for new LTL, general freight transportation logistics operations, AKA small trucking, pickup and delivery?
There are a number of contracts open, and I promise you I have a slide dedicated to how you find the bid opportunities in your industry specifically. Off the top of my head, I can't for sure say within Miami-Dade County which contracts are available and which aren't, but I can point you to the resource that will tailor it exactly to your industry and even let you know exactly when the existing contracts, which would be your competitor, when those contracts end. Okay, so how about that? Hang tight and I will make sure that we go over that slide.
That's perfect. Thank you, Alexis. And I think that it ties also with Magdala. She just typed, what is the process to get on those schedules? And I did see in your presentation some slides that relate to that. So it will be answered shortly.
I love it. You all are ahead of the game. This is great. I promise we will definitely cover how to get started in the bidding and proposal process, and also the resources that are available to you to let you monitor and know when bids are upcoming, when they end, okay? Well, thank you guys for the questions. I love that. So the first of the categories for contracting is the fixed price. The pricing of this group of government contracts will never change. It's fixed. The risk is transferred to the contract owner, which would be the government. And this is due to the fact that these contracts are not based on the amount of time or resources spent. So this is a need-based kind of contract. So if we know we need your service and there's no way around it, and it doesn't really have a time expiration on it, or your service doesn't have a time expiration on it, then this is the kind of contract that more than likely will be procured for your business. So these kind of services would be janitorial if there's no in-house maintenance service. These are the things that we know we need, and they will be going on for an extended amount of time at the set rate. So this is different from the time and material contracts. These are, the government establishes a per hour labor rate, assesses the material cost, and establishes a price ceiling so that they're not overcharged. The contractor will only deliver labor and not the materials in some situation, which are known as labor hour contracts. This is the construction. This is trucking. These are the things where if you're hauling materials in your trucking business, I'll make it applicable to those that are participating now. This is more than likely the kind of contract that they will hold you to. It'll be based on the hourly rate of your truck rental or the cost of the material, which in that case would be gas. And then whatever you're transporting or whatever materials they need you to take to the new shopping plaza, right? The concrete for the new shopping plaza or the new apartment building, which more likely in Miami, right? Then those costs are not necessarily factored into your contract unless otherwise stated. So this is more for those general contracting opportunities here when you're talking about building and development. Cost reimbursement is contracts that are more likely to be for research and development than for actual goods and services. So cost reimbursement contracts are divided into many subcategories sometimes, and they have a minimum and maximum payment range. This is for service-based businesses. Graphic art is a service. Marketing consulting is considered a service. More than likely, you will render your services first and then receive payment upon completion of the task. So if you're a service-based business and you're looking to go into the procurement space in cities or municipalities, make sure that you are ready to take on the labor upfront without the pay. The payment only comes after. Most cities don't do deposits either. So they either are paying you in full once the job is completed or not. There's no deposit kind of opportunity with a cost reimbursement. So just be mindful of that as well. Can your business afford to take this on fiscally at this time? Can it afford to deploy the resources for an extended period of time? As I said, procurement processes can be a little bit cumbersome at times. It's really important to understand these categories and see truly where your business falls. Otherwise, it may result in miscommunication with the city or with the vendor that's procured your service, and you never want to have a bad relationship as a small business. Last are incentive contracts. These are based either on a cost reimbursement contract or a fixed price contract with added incentive. The time base with incentive is the speedy completion. So if you are able to complete your contract before the time that's been delegated, there's opportunity for you to renew, for you to roll over, and for you to make a really good impression on the vendor by maybe doing an added value deal. We worked with a print company for a large brochure that was going out to Miami-Dade and Broward County at my previous job. And they turned around the job in 60 days instead of 90. And as an added incentive, they also decided to deliver to the businesses as well. It was a residential brochure, but they dropped off the extras to the business as well. That stuck with us. Those kind of small touches stick with the vendors, even in the situations where, yes, it's the lowest bid or it's based on price and not necessarily quality. There's always opportunity for decision makers to vouch for you when you make a good impression. Now we'll talk about the indefinite delivery and quantity contracting category. These are the most adaptable government contracts. They're given out when the government isn't sure of how much of an item or service they'll need and when they'll need it. They're also known as task order contracts or delivery order contracts. We called them at the city that I work for blanket POs. We don't know how long we'll need you. We don't know exactly when we'll need it, but we need to have this money procured and set aside for your services. Those kind of services can range from, again, marketing, printing items, office supply items, catering items. If you're trying to contract with a city that does banquet events or does a lot of special events for commission, videography, tech services, if IT isn't necessarily in-house or they're outsourcing, or the IT department has been tasked to outsource certain things, those are the opportunities for you to create these delivery and quantity contracts to where you have a set pool of money. And once the money depletes, then the contract is fulfilled or ended. It's not based on a necessary time frame, except for the constraints of the fiscal calendar that the city adheres to. So it's a great way to keep longevity without having to go through that long bid process. This is also great for those mid-sized small businesses, the ones that aren't quite at 150K or in the six figures yet, but they definitely are past the 3K P card mark in terms of services. This is a sweet spot for you. Create these blanket POs, generate these relationships so that people know that they can call on you based on the quality of your service and also the guarantee that the work will be done correctly. So where can you find out about all these different bid opportunities that we're talking about? You can go directly to the city's website that you are trying to partner with or find the procurement opportunities with. You can use third-party bid apps such as BidNet. That's the most accurate one I find. Or you can look into your local business resources such as the South Florida Anchor Alliance, the SBA, the Miami-Dade Business Navigators, which is where you are now, and of course, Startup FIU Local. So we will help navigate with you how to find these resources and how to make sure that you are visible in those spaces. So we'll talk about now the procurement process at the local government level. So this is the city and county levels of government, which is where you as a small business should be starting in your procurement journey with municipalities. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of these procurement processes? An advantage is that it's public information. You simply go to the website for the city that you're trying to bid with. They should have their PPNs or solicitations listed either in a table form or PDF for you to click on any open bid opportunities that you see. It's an increased selection pot. If you know already to go directly to the cities, you're at an advantage. And you know that there will be a point of contact locally. So if you do get stuck somewhere in the bid process, there's a directory on the procurement director, the procurement coordinators, there's all this information. Or if you're local, you can simply go to the city hall yourself and speak with someone who can assist. Now, the disadvantages we've already kind of discussed. The process can be lengthy. The contracts may already be in place for extended terms. They may be long-term contracts, or the products can't be seen or handheld until delivered, which is, again, if you are doing that cost reimbursement contract method, then you need to make sure that your business is in place to take on those expenses without getting payment upfront. So how do we secure a bid in the city level? To secure a bid, a company must understand the bidding process in Florida and the specific requirements of the particular government agency. This includes a working knowledge of the methods of pursuing a contract, the specifications of each type of agency, and awareness of the paths to disqualification, all of which we have just covered. You now have at least a general knowledge of the buying methods and some examples of what would qualify you or disqualify you. You understand the different types of contract categories. Now we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the actual process of bidding. And we also gave some general reference tools for where you can find these bids locally. So to secure a bid, the first thing you need to do is register as a business and as a vendor with the city. So each city's vendor registration portal is different. Most cities use Demand Star. Some use an in-house or inbuilt system for getting your vendor information included, or sometimes they outsource the entire process. It really just depends. But in every instance and at the local level, there is a vendor portal or registration option when you go to that cities.gov website, to the official website for the city. Then you do your bid submission, and then you do a follow-up. The follow-up is key. Many people give their proposals in, give their bids in, and then wait to hear from someone. That's not necessarily a bad thing because there's nothing that says that you need to reach back out, but I always find that it creates better synergy in the relationships that you're forming and keeps you at the front of the decision maker's mind when you are following up. So these are the top contracts right now in Miami-Dade. F&B registration contracts, so deep freezers, chilled trucks, those kind of things there's a lot of open bids for those now. Construction bids, obviously always a number one in Miami-Dade. Electrical needs for the new buildings is always a need. Office equipment and building maintenance. These are the top 5 categories. So if your small business falls in any of these categories, there's a good chance that you will be able to, at the very least, see what's out there in terms of the bid opportunities. So this I pulled from BizNet, which is one of the third-party resources, and I will make sure to include the links in the chat for you all. This is all of the current contracts. This is public record. The current contracts, the title of the contract, the effective date, and the expiration date of these contracts. So some of these contracts are up as soon as next month. Some are up in October. Some won't be up until 2027. Some will be up in early 2023. Look at the types of businesses based on the title. IT, equipment and kitchen parts, right? Managed security services, that's a service-based one, right? Commercial software, that's tech. Portable water and food ice emergency, that's refrigeration. Kitchen equipment. If your business provides any of these services, and look at the amounts, there's opportunity here for you to be able to look into your competitors. One, it's public information. And two, prepare yourself for when some of these fast approaching bids close, so that when they reopen, you're ready. And we'll talk about fiscal calendars as well, because it's very important to understand in the city when their budgeting process begins and ends, because it does affect the amount of money that they allocate to bids. So take a look at this, think about it. I will put the link for BizNet in the chat, and you can go and set your own filters in it and see what bid opportunities there are and that are tailored to your business. So we have covered very generally the government procurement process, the process for bidding and proposals. We've talked about methods, we've talked about contracting categories. And I said when we talked about the registration process that follow-up is a really important tool. Being visible in these spaces with these decision makers can be the difference in you being able to grow for opportunities, and also just being visible for those more closed opportunities that aren't blanketed for everyone, and you're being able to be referenced in those spaces. So we'll talk about marketing basics for municipal contracts right now. And that includes marketing strategy, messaging, and understanding your target market, and the marketing tools that you already have at your disposal. If you've been in any of my webinars before, you know I am a big champion for utilizing the resources that you already have without having to allocate additional funding for marketing. There's already so much at your disposal, and you as a small business can't necessarily afford to trial things with price attached to them. So I'm really a really big champion for utilizing the things that are already at your discretion to elevate your marketing and elevate your business. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go into social media, specifically leveraging LinkedIn in this pool and in this target market. So the marketing strategy is simple. It's two-pronged here. You utilize an integrated marketing plan, and then you make sure that all your content is up to date. So the integrated marketing plan is really dual folded as well. It includes your search engine optimization strategy. If you took my Dig into Digital webinar, you know the importance of search engine optimization, that it's an organic tool that you use based on the algorithms in place that allow your website or your business to have visibility on Google. If you set up your Google business profile, then you already have a competitive edge over the smaller businesses that maybe have not taken that step. But buyers are searching for your business well before bid opportunities. Everyone who works in a procurement department is also a person outside who needs services. And I will tell you from working in government, a lot of times there are referral opportunities that will tell this business to register as a vendor so that they can be in the pool. People are constantly looking for you. Make sure that you're optimizing that opportunity. You've already done the incredibly hard and brave work of choosing to own a small business and be present online. Make sure that that website is doing the work for you and making you visible when people go to search for your products or services, okay? And that means ensuring that your website has a page dedicated to government-centered information. Make sure that your certifications are up to date on your website. Build out an attachment for all of your licensing, right? For your most recent tax form, for your EIN, for any kind of legal paperwork that you've ever had to submit in the past, make it all accessible to the government entities. We don't want to have to search. They don't want to have to search for the information on your site. And also, if you do need to include it in one of those bigger proposals, it's already there and prepared. So what is some key web content that you can use? We talked a little bit about it already, the updated certifications and permitting, maybe an infographic to show your reach or how your product or service stacks up against competitors. If there's been any case studies done on your work or the importance of your field, any testimonials, and then always a call to action. A small click button that says contact for more information, learn more, see additional services. You want them to engage with you. That's going to lead to an email. Now there's a personal contact, right? So think about that, and as you're developing and updating your website, what are these things that are missing? Are any of these items readily available on your website as of now? Is there somewhere where you can enhance these items or elevate them? So think about a website, a business website that you went to recently. Think about your own website. Of the things that we discussed in terms of web content and key content, what things are you doing well? What things can be updated? What things can be taken away? Think about that as we continue on this journey, because it really is important. Every bid process at this point has some kind of either an email, or they want your website, or they want your social media. They want to see more about you at a glance. Even if they're asking you to provide a proposal with detail, it's always great to have the information instantaneously. So let's talk about the messaging and our target market, which is local government entities, okay? So you need to understand that your audience is going to be found in these different ways, through public resources and through the key data points that you're hitting for what they're looking for. And I'll show you some action items on how to make sure that you're accomplishing these two things in a smart way. So the resources for market research are public data, sites like gsa.gov, sam.gov, sba.gov, right? This is where your audience is, because this is where they're posting the bids. So going into these sites, going and seeing what's going on, seeing if there's any updated ordinances or any new opportunities is crucial to you being able to be visible in these spaces. Making sure you're searching keywords like NAICS, PSC, searching the word bid on these sites will help to narrow down the amount of information that you have to sift through. And then lastly, understanding fiscal calendars. Promotion during key points in the fiscal calendar for the municipality you want to work with is key to making sure that you not only understand their cycle, but it helps to make sure that you understand the budgeting for yourself and when you will be paid more when these contracts are coming up, so you are in position to bid competitively. So again, this is the fiscal year for Boca Raton, and this one is for Broward County overall. Miami-Dade County has theirs listed on their website, but I couldn't find a clear enough graphic of it. But October 1 is traditionally start of fiscal, and then September is when they're doing all of the public hearings. And that's when everything that's on the budget is read before the commission and either approved or adjusted. April and June, the staff prepares the budget for development. And in July is the budget reconciliation. So knowing this information, think about when would be the best time to really be aggressive about maybe attending commission meetings, going to networking events, going to workshops, making sure that your procurement documents are updated, going in and registering as a vendor based on these cycles, right? And then for here, June, they do workshops, they do the meetings with the city commission, they do a budget workshop in July, which is when they discuss either the existing items or the new items that are being proposed for the budget, the adoption of the different budgets. And then the first budget public hearing is in September, the adoption of the preliminary millage, which is the pre-approved amount, and then the final budget hearing is in September. So you have a clear idea of when they're discussing the money, and it's up to you to make sure that you understand that they understand that there's a need that your business can fill. Be in those spaces when these budget conversations are happening. This is all public information. The commission meetings are public unless otherwise promoted as closed. And you can go and see exactly how your commission feels about the items that are being budgeted, how they feel about the services, what services they think are important. And that's all information that you can internalize and use to position yourself properly for opportunities. So what are some of the key data points that you need to be looking at when you're talking about your audience? Does the agency have the propensity to sell to you? So do they have a need for your items? What are they buying in the future? Again, That's all information that's projected in that millage and in those budget hearings. Do you have the experience that aligns to the agency or opportunity that you're seeking? If there's a minimum years of experience required, do you meet that? Do you meet all of the certifications that they're requiring? Even if it doesn't say that it's a requirement, if it says that it's preferred in the write-up or the RFP or in the bid proposal paperwork or in the PPN, make sure that you're doing everything you can to stay competitive in those spaces. So here are some really good resources. These are all public resources for the key data points that we discussed. One, you can find all of the agency information from the SBA scorecards. The second is the acquisition forecast, which aligns itself with the fiscal year and the budgeting schedule. And then the third is to look up previous contracts, like what I showed on the previous slide. You can put in the expiration date, you can put in when the contract started, and look at the kind of contracts that were awarded, what language did they use, what certifications did they have. You could even look into adjusting your pricing if need be, to be competitive in that space. So what are the action steps that you need to take? You need to tailor your marketing collaterals to your audience. That infographic, that one pager that says that you have the certification needed can be very helpful in the decision making. It's easy to digest. You need to pursue designations and partnerships. Look at the information that's been given you. Look to meet with and partner with community leaders, partner with the economic development department, understand the processes better. There's no harm in asking for help and resources, and then checking the forecasts and statuses to identify the opportunity trends. I listed the five categories of contract and industry that were relevant now. It may change in a month, it may change by the next quarter. So be very vigilant about looking into those opportunities and looking and filtering, seeing what's going on and following the trends, especially if you want to continue to progress in your pursuit of having these municipal relationships long-term. So let's talk about some of the marketing tools. These are going to be a little unconventional. I picked 3 that I know that every small business has and starts off with. And here's some ways that you can retool them to better position you for procurement opportunities. So the existing tools would be your website, your digital assets, and if you have a newsletter or e-blast. So for the website, use recommendations and quotes. Make sure you link your social media and any relevant partnerships that you may have on your website and display your memberships and certifications. Namely on if you have a dedicated page for government or for procurement opportunities on your website, this is where all of that information should live in a clear and concise way. Digital assets, update your e-signature. Make sure it includes the useful information to procurement. Make sure it says what your certifications are. Use a hyperlink to your social media or even to your proposal deck in your email signature. Those are some little things that you can do that may have a big impact. You can integrate your social media or your dedicated government page as well using a QR code or a hyperlinked image. And then lastly is the newsletter e-blast. Cultivate an infographic within the e-blast that you already have. Send quarterly reports to a dedicated list of contacts. So those contacts that you're curating within the municipality spaces, send a dedicated e-blast with your quarterly report. Let them know how your business is doing. Highlight the strengths of your businesses in a way that still feels organic. It's public knowledge and it's information that they'll need in the future, and it's information that you should be proud of. Lastly would be leveraging the social media. I'm going to talk specifically about LinkedIn, and here's why. 2 million government employees between state, local, and federal are active on LinkedIn under their company's page. So they are representatives of their company in the digital space, scouting in the digital space. So let's say you make a connection with someone on LinkedIn. You go to the Miami-Dade County LinkedIn, you see the director of procurement, you hit connect. If their page is private, I've tooled some messaging for how to speak to different people at different levels of the decision-making process. I think that this would be so incredibly helpful for you, especially if you're already trying to make those touch points, you're connecting socially, it really does make a difference. They get so many requests. This is a way for you to stand out. So let's say, for instance, that you're talking to a leader in your industry, someone who has done government procurement before, or someone that you looked up their business on BidNet, you saw that they've done some really large contracts before, and their contract's about to end, and you may need that referral. Hi, blank, I've been following your content. I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished. I recently read, listened, interviewed, watched a video of you. I'd love to discover more about your work. Feeding to people's ego is great. People love to be complimented. They love to know that something that they're doing is being well received by the community. And it's a genuine olive branch. It doesn't sound gimmicky. It's not too fangirlish, if you will. It's professional enough to where it will catch the reader's attention, and it's short enough to where they don't have to sift through to figure out what you want. Let's say you're reaching out to a city employee. Hi, I noticed you worked for the name of the city. I wanted to reach out to discuss potentially working together. I'm blank, share your experience. I'm currently seeking new opportunities. I'd love to find out if I may be a fit for any current openings. So this, again, is very straight to the point. It's very concise. I want an opportunity with you. I'm an expert at this. So it's not just an ask, it's a transaction. Not only will this connection benefit you, it will also benefit the employee, because now they have a resource that they can bring back to the team. If you end up speaking with a procurement decision maker, maybe the head of procurement, the department head of procurement, the director of procurement, right? Hi, I see that you work with or worked for, this could be the city or the department. I wanted to reach out because I'm currently exploring new opportunities. I've been working professionally for this many years, and I am so ready for my next big challenge. If you have time, I'd love to talk about whether my background would make a fit for the openings that you have soon. So this one is a little bit more detailed specific. This one reads almost like a pitch, because you want to get all of your pertinent information out in one time. With this one, the difference is you're not necessarily expecting a response back, but you have left them with all of the information that they would need to contact you in the future, or to refer you if there is a bidding opportunity comes up. They don't necessarily need to respond back, thank you, I'll look into it, but they can pass your information along. You've given them the name of your industry, the number of years you've worked in the industry. If you wanted to leave your website, this would be a place to do it. If you wanted to leave that government page, this would be a place to do it. Now it's in their hands. You've left the impression, you've taken the first step, and now they have everything that they need without having to do any more discourse with you per se to take that information on to the next level. So how do you follow up if they do respond, thank you so much for reaching out, there's this opportunity, or after you've met them at a networking event or maybe at a commission meeting? This is the best way to follow up after an initial connection. So if you met in person and then you're following up, you found their LinkedIn online, I've noticed your presence on here, I'm so impressed by your work. I'd love to see if we can work together and give the context of the position. So I'd love to see if we could work together on some upcoming bids. If you have bids in my area, could you direct me to where I could find those? Would you be open to discussing over a quick phone call or over coffee? The only reason I encourage that action item, 2 reasons. 1, you've already met this person face to face, and this is now the digital connection. So they obviously don't have any problem meeting face to face, even in the climate, correct? And lastly, if they say no to the physical meeting, it doesn't mean that it's a no to meeting at all. They may say, well, no, I can't do coffee, my schedule's really busy, but shoot me an email. Here's my email address. It leaves it open for pathways of opportunity. And that is always what you want to create when you're connecting on a professional level. So here are some other best practices for your LinkedIn. If you're going to be connecting to professionals on LinkedIn, your LinkedIn needs to be professional as well, okay? So your social presence on LinkedIn, you need to make sure that you're targeting for business to business or business to government. it needs to be under your corporate page, your company logo, your short description, and your link to your website. It should not be a personal picture. If it's not a headshot, it should be your company logo. You can use press releases, you can use company news to link and post, and make sure that you have the action button activated to allow for people to contact you once they follow you. So for direct to government, it's important to know who's who in government, if they're an influencer, if they're a buyer, if they're administrative procurement, if they're program managers or contracting officers. So the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Businesses Utilization is a civilian platform. Make sure that you link with them. That's a great network to have on LinkedIn, and also the Office of Small Business Programs. Those are great networks to make sure that you're linked to, because then it opens you up to their network as well. And then you can search by city and follow the cities as you see fit. Once you follow the city, it usually gives you a list of the employees that have registered under that company as well via LinkedIn. So think about it the next time that you're doing your LinkedIn. Here's the Miami-Dade County LinkedIn page. They have over 8,000 employees that are actively connected on social media, on LinkedIn specifically. So these are employees that when they made their LinkedIn account, they elected to choose that they are a county employee, a verified county employee. That would be the best place to start in terms of using those connectors that we talked about. Think about how you can utilize this tool. Think about some of the things that you could post, that infographic, that certification announcement. Those are all things that you can post on your LinkedIn that would feel organic, not necessarily gimmicky, but can also be used at a later time as a point of reference when you're doing your bids and proposals, and also a connector to those decision makers. So some final tips for overall marketing for municipal contracting is to start with a plan that's measurable and ties to your overall business goal. Use search engine optimization and social media to attract, educate, and build relationship with government decision makers. Have all the basic information for government bids accessible and up to date, and make sure the messaging is tailored when contacting with potential bid entities. So a quick wrap up of everything that we've discussed. Definitely start with a plan. Make sure your market research and strategy addresses the needs of your target market. Understand what buying methods and contracting categories work best for your business. Connect with the key people or departments in the city that you wish to do business with. Be creative with the existing tools that you have, and make the necessary information easy to access. Do we have any questions at this time? Any additional questions?
Thank you, Alexis. Great presentation. I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A,
Okay, cool.
those that I am aware of and know about. But
Great.
this is a great opportunity, guys. We have 2 more minutes where Alexis can answer any of your questions. If you don't feel comfortable typing in on the Q&A, feel free to raise your hand and we will address.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will leave the link for BidNet in the chat shortly. So if there aren't any more questions, and if you did enjoy this presentation and want to know more about procurement opportunities, more about the resources that are available to you and how to position your business, we are doing a small business service providers boot camp, a pathway to procurement. It starts on August 15th and ends on August 25th. It's completely virtual with the exception of your pitch day opportunities, which Barbara can give you some more information about. But this is a great resource for you to utilize. It's going to expound on in more detail and in a more intimate and one-on-one way some of the things that we've discussed today. And also there's mentoring opportunities for you. So you'll have a contact that you can reach out to during this process as well, to make your pathway to procurement streamlined and successful. So if you are interested in applying for this bootcamp, it is a free resource that we are offering in partnership with Bank of America as Startup FIU Local. I will go ahead and put that in the chat now.
I just did. I was ahead of you, so I
Okay,
placed the information. I have posted it twice on the chat.
great.
But before we answer three of the questions that are
Okay,
in,
great.
one is directly to you, two others are general. I would like to add, some of you, I am familiar with the names. Those that are connected, certainly if you're aiming to deep dive into the procurement arena, this is the boot camp that will provide you with the tools and the template to follow moving forward to go into your procurement journey, right? Certainly, Alexis did the greatest intro I've seen so far when it comes as to what you need to do in order to get into your procurement pathway, especially understanding how you need to market yourself and how is it that the cycles for purchasing go. So she was right on point. For those of you that are asking if you're getting these materials, if you're getting the presentation is going to be shared with all of you through the Navigator channel, and you will also be able to access this presentation, the recorded presentation, through YouTube, because it will be shared with you as well. There is one more question, Alexis, and it's from Charles Masters. I happen to know Charles. Hi. He's just asking, any thoughts on hiring companies that help with the bidding proposal process?
Thoughts on it? Yes, I think that it would be good for them to outsource that part of the process personally. As someone who worked for a city that's procurement process was entirely in-house. However, I will say that it's one of those things that's fixed and dare I say maybe archaic, where if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So demand star is king in the procurement space. It just is. But there are entities like FIU that have their own built portal, which means that they had to outsource it to somebody in order to build it out. So those opportunities do exist. I find that in the South Florida market, though, they are unfortunately far and few in between. But if you are at the point where you're looking to offer that kind of services, then maybe scale back, zoom out a little bit and see what you can do in the interim to cultivate maybe little breadcrumbs that will ultimately lead to that, right? So maybe you know how to do backup iOS systems, POS systems, right? Maybe you have a better system for funneling the information or some kind of CRM or management software that they can use to track the progress, track the project, or a work order system that needs to be developed. Try starting there and then seeing what opens up from there. Sometimes it's okay when we do the bigger services and products to zoom out and see the little nuggets that we may be missing in pursuit of the big fish. So
I will add to your point, Alexis, that those of you that are thinking of not only going into that arena, but hiring someone to help you out, honestly, if you're a small business, the first thing that comes to play is, you need to know what you're getting into. You need to know what is it that you're offering, and you have to have a clear understanding of the process. Right. So it always begins first in-house. Yes, you may look not for people that you can hire to help you with the bidding process, but how to train you to become knowledgeable so you can transfer that knowledge to peers that work with you as well. So we have both sides, right? We have the ones that go into the larger, or you're aiming to come into this business to provide that service, or B, you are in need of, and you're thinking, hey, should I hire someone which will make my life easier? In reality is that there is no easy living on the bidding process. What is important is for you to understand what and how they are expecting to receive your response to that proposal. And going back to the point that Alexis brought up, that is what we are intending to guide you and provide you tools with on the bootcamp. So that will be a great first opportunity if that's what you're aiming to get to. Knowing the type of business that Charles is in, knowing how he operates, I think that he needs just to understand the procurement process itself. Right. And he's just saying thank you. He just replied.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it's going to vary from city to city, but once you have the basics and you kind of know the ebb and flow of it a little bit, it becomes a lot less intimidating, I find.
Very good. Let me see. I see something else here. Let me just make sure. Nope, we don't have. Oh, yes. There came in from Lourdes Aberdeen. It says these information hubs like BitSync require memberships and it can get costly.
Right. So BitSync, yes, it can get costly, but think about the investment into your business. And not everyone is at the point where they need to be utilizing BitSync yet. That not everyone is there. Most of the municipalities, because it's public information, they have the bid information listed. They have their procurement notices listed and the solicitations listed, which is free, and that's free to access. I'm always an advocate for accessing the free resources that are available through programs like this, through Startup FIU Local, through SBDC. These are all avenues that are free and have the information as well. But if you're ready to be competitive about your bidding, so if you're that mid-range to that 150K service provider or product provider, and you're looking for the bids, or you feel like you're not being competitive in that market, then absolutely it's worth the $100 base pay to have access to that and to see when bids are up and when they'll be starting up again, how long they procure in your area of expertise or in your industry as well, to know that cost. You have to be, again, very mindful of where you are in your business and what you can and cannot take on.
Very good. Thanks, Alexis. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A box. So I think that we are good.
Great. Well, thank you all again. I really appreciate this. This was great. I love that there were so many questions. Hi, Adriana. How are you?
I just muted Tina. I guess that she didn't realize that she was muted.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. This information is all going to be accessible to you via Navigators and on YouTube. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for spending this time with me.
Thank you, Alexis. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.